back. Body dysmorphic disorder, more commonly known as body dysmorphia, was first categorised as a diagnosis in 1987.
Those going through it will often spend time worrying about the flaws in their appearance that often go unnoticed by those around them. Keith Russell is here to share his own personal story this morning, and we're also joined by clinical psychologist Siobhan McArdle. Thank you both for braving the elements. Yes.
And coming to join us. Keith, we'll start with you. You were diagnosed with body dysmorphic disorder, and you've struggled with it for a lot of your life. So tell us your story.
Well, I suppose I started really noticing my own body and being really self-conscious of myself, probably in my early teens, probably around 12 or 13. And it went on for a long, long time. And like I said, I was diagnosed probably around 2020, so I have a lot of kind of life experience of, you know, kind of feeling very kind of negative about myself and, you know, not getting a lot of sleep, crying yourself to sleep at night, constantly kind of telling yourself you don't like yourself, you know, being very self-conscious about flaws that I thought I had. And as you said, like, you know, these are flaws that most people wouldn't even notice. Like, just like I would go through my body from top to bottom and I would list things about myself I didn't like. And that kind of went on for a long, long time. And it's really only when I was kind of diagnosed and I kind of learned the term body dysmorphia, you know, kind of all of a sudden my feelings, they're still there, but I kind of felt a little bit validated and I kind of realised that there's actually a condition for how I was feeling.
What was your relationship with food like during this period of time?
Very unhealthy.
Okay.
Very unhealthy. I had a very unhealthy relationship with food and exercise. I did a lot of binge eating.
How when you talk about binge eating, what would happen during those times?
Well, I would feel so depressed about myself that I would just want to kind of comfort eat or emotionally, and I would eat junk food. I'd eat anything just to try and make myself feel better. And then as soon as I would eat something, the guilt would start. And then the negative thoughts would start in my head, and then I would just want to kind of purge the food back up again because I didn't want the food kind of, you know, sitting in my stomach or starting to put on weight again. And then I would stand in front of the mirror and just kind of point out things about myself I didn't like again. And then that spiral would start all over again, you know.
All right, so it was endless. And when you talk about negative thoughts, you're talking about very dark thoughts.
Yeah, it's a very dark and lonely place to be for a long, long time. And when you don't tell anybody how you're feeling, it's even worse because, you know, if you don't tell anybody how you're feeling and you don't share your thoughts with anyone, nobody can help you, nobody can really understand how you're feeling. And it was only when I was diagnosed and I started to actually blog about my story, you know, people started to come to me and go, okay, Keith, we had no idea how you were feeling all these years.
Did you think, you know, being a man and men must be tough, we can't show vulnerability, can't be emotional. Did you think with body dysmorphia there was a stigma with you being a man and going through this?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. I mean, like I didn't know there was a term for it, but I still felt stigma, I still felt shame. I had such a deep dislike for myself, I just assumed everyone else did as well, and I'm like, I'm not going to go around and start telling people, you know, that I didn't like my chin, I didn't like my hairline, I didn't like my wrists, I didn't like, you know, all these type of things about my body I didn't like.
But even when you talk about not liking your wrists, like your wrists,
I didn't like my shadow.
Yeah, your shadow.
I didn't like I'd look at my shadow on the ground and I didn't like the silhouette of my shadow.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you weren't necessarily comparing yourself to anyone else, you were just not liking yourself.
Yeah, it's not like I wanted to look like someone else, I just didn't want to look like me.
Wow. Siobhan, let's bring you in here. Thank you for joining us. Are these common traits, common symptoms of body dysmorphia?
Yes, they are, yes. So that honing in on different parts of your body that you perceive are flawed in some way and really quite obsessing around that. So what Keith was saying there is that, like, spending a lot of time, like, you just become very consumed about and obsessed about different parts of your body. And then, you know, some of the behaviors that Keith was talking about where like you're potentially constantly checking those parts of your body. Other people would potentially compare themselves to others, or the other thing that people might do is that they're constantly reassurance seeking. So, is this okay, over and over again? But then with that comes a lot of distress, a lot of shame, a lot of anxiety, a lot of self-criticism, and obviously leading to other mental health difficulties.
Your accent is so soothing. I could listen to this lady talk all day. When it comes to body dysmorphia, a lot of people would think this is something that would only affect females. But that's actually not the case.
It's not the case. And we haven't, there isn't like a significant amount of research in this area, but we do know that the prevalence rates are similar in males and females. So again, it depends on the research, but it could be 1.5 to 3% of the population. And in some research, it indicates that males actually, it's a higher prevalence in males. But it's just not, I suppose males don't tend to report. And when they do report, they underreport. So it's not that bad.
Why would you say males would be higher than females?
In body dysmorphic disorder,
Yeah. And do you know why that would be?
Why that would be, I suppose what we're seeing now with body dysmorphic disorder is that we're also seeing within that, in terms of the classification, that there's also muscle dysmorphia.
Okay.
So that's a big aspect of body dysmorphia.
Okay, so treatment for this. Where someone realizes, as Keith did, there is a syndrome.
Yes.
So how do you start your course of help to change your mindset and to find your way out of it?
And I suppose that's a really key point, because with other mental health difficulties like depression and anxiety, the individual maybe, I just don't want to feel like this anymore. But with body dysmorphic disorder, the individual believes that it is really real, like that I actually need to, it could be around the hair, around the skin, around the jawline, like I need to do something to fix that, and then I'll feel better. And that's obviously not the case. So really it's getting the individual to engage in support, which might be through the GP, getting clinical support through a psychologist. That's really, the way forward.
Also nowadays, if you watch any show, reality shows like Love Island, for example, the men on that are ripped. They've got six-packs. The girls, their bodies are perfect. There's so much pressure on people nowadays to look perfect. Talk to me about your treatment and that you've had and where you are with your recovery.
When I started writing my blogs, it was more just about my anxiety and stuff like that, and then people mentioned the term body dysmorphia to me, and that's when I discovered the term, and that's when the light bulb went off over my head.
Was that a relief for you?
Yes.
That light bulb moment?
Yes, it was a massive relief, just a weight lifted off my shoulders, thinking that there's actually a condition for how I'm feeling, and then if there's a condition, then I'm sure there's support and there's help out there. And then when I started sharing my story, I had lots of men and women contact me and telling me that they were feeling the same, and all of a sudden you just feel like part of this little community. You don't feel so alone anymore. I went to my GP, I talked to him about it. I went to my therapist, I spoke to her about it. I spoke to a nutritionist. I spoke to so many people on my podcast about it. It's just like, why didn't I say something sooner? And that's why I always say to someone, please don't bottle things up. Please don't just hide in the shadows like I did for a long time.
Was it the fear that stopped you? Was it the embarrassment?
It probably was. It probably was. And of course, like I said, I had such negative thoughts flowing around my head. It's hard to break those thoughts, and it doesn't happen overnight.
No, of course.
And I'll be living with this probably for the rest of my life, but my triggers are manageable. I'm more comfortable in my own skin now. I'm a happier person in myself. We have all other anxieties day to day that we have to deal with, but in my own self, I'm feeling much better.
Okay, Siobhan, for anybody who's watching us who may have similar symptoms to Keith, what would you say to them?
I would say, just as Keith said here, that he spent a long time before he actually went and sought help, and difficulties like eating disorders and body dysmorphic disorder, they thrive in shame and secrecy. That's where they really grow, and it's that first step in reaching out and getting help sooner rather than later. And it's great that Keith has come on and talked to us about this. So, hopefully people will come forward and seek support.
No, absolutely. I think by you sitting here and having this conversation so openly and honestly, it will help loads of people. Thank you both for joining us this morning. We appreciate it. Thank you.